lose an entire production base. And one of the ways that they're innovating to address that is through moving up the supply chain. So it was already happening. Suppliers creating product that they sell direct. The value add in the fashion industry, the large part of the value is added at the top end of the supply chain. So suppliers looking at how they can do that more. And I think this crisis will accelerate that. There's a pause and a time to innovate, and we're seeing that impact on business models. I believe that the only way we can move to a more sustainable industry is through more sustainable business models, and that means rethinking the way we sell, the way we buy, rethinking what we own and how we own it. And we're seeing thinkers being able to put time into meaningful strategy, which could be exciting in 3 to 6 months' time.
Excellent. So, and that segues very nicely into probably Nick's some other questions to discuss, which is sort of more impact from recent times. I think both Tamsin and Geraldine, you guys touch a bit about the impact from COVID, and that plays out across the entire supply chain. I think from retailers and brands that, especially those with physical retail that are struggling, all the way to supply chain impacts in terms of supply being cut off or orders being canceled. So maybe Christine, you can start us off, right? Tell us a bit more about with COVID, what are some of the challenges and impact you have been seeing, and what are some of the potential opportunities going ahead?
Yeah, right, for sure. Well, during COVID, obviously for a group of brands trying to offer their products and services, many of the stores were closed. So, you know, that automatically puts a stop to your business in many ways. Of course, the online part is different, but we also had a lot of our distribution centers and production as well, design studios closed. So really that's where things halt. And then you see a future which is quite uncertain. I mean, at the moment, we're still, there will be a before and an after COVID, but we're still in the midst of it as well in many respects. So, you know, from my personal perspective, I think we will see the tools, like was mentioned before, a lot of the virtual showrooms or virtual fashion shows. 2 of our houses have actually announced that they're not going to be keeping with the normal fashion calendar. So that's something that's being examined to say, is this tenable? You know, and again, it's COVID has been a catalyst to really rethink the business models and to see where these business models have been problematic, and it's going to instigate a lot of change and hopefully some really positive change. So we know that with the calendar for fashion shows, it was very much very demanding, really fast. It just kept proliferating, adding new cruise line or whatever it was to the calendar. And so Gucci has now announced that they're going to do 2 shows per year, and they'll be seasonless. So a really big shift in the way that they're looking at their business model. And Saint Laurent has also announced that they will not be following the traditional calendar this year. So we'll see how that trickles down to other brands, which is a great opportunity to make sure that the way we're moving forward is improved. But I do think one thing that's really important is making sure we're tracking the impacts, because there's going, you know, of this catalytic change with COVID. And with this acceleration toward adopting new innovations, people are excited, and we have a good feeling that yes, this is going to create, this is going to be less of an impact environmentally if people aren't flying in for a physical fashion show. But it's now is our time to really make sure we're tracking the impact and we're getting as much data as possible so that the decisions we're making are really as smart and as informed as possible too.
Yeah, and I think one of the impacts that was mentioned, I think Sophia, you mentioned it earlier, is that I think with the virus, everyone would be thinking a lot more about their supply chains, thinking about where materials would be sourced. You want to share a little bit more about that in terms of how you see that playing out for manufacturers and brands, and again, what are likely challenges they would face in the midst of COVID going forward?
For sorry, is this for Sophia? I didn't quite catch that.
For Sophia, yeah.
Alex, I didn't hear the question. I'm having really a lot of problems with the reception. I don't know if anyone else is, but could you just really quickly just say that again?
Yeah, happy. I think in general, like, we'd love to again hear your views, impact of COVID-19 on supply chains. Especially, I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier was in terms of rethinking where materials are being sourced from. Sorry, Sophia, I think, yeah. Can you hear me? If not, we're also typing questions on the chat.
I just heard you. Should I talk about the supply chain, or how we can? So is that what you're asking me? Our
supply chain and COVID-19.
Yeah, I mean, I think and there has been discussions recently about, you know, just buying what you need and not making too many lines in fashion. Obviously, we're actually exhibiting right now at the London Fashion Week digitally, which is fantastic. But I think this thing of not overproducing, and I think COVID-19 will be making everybody now look at actually the essentials of life, in life, and what we purchase, and in the fashion industry, therefore, what we make. And I think it's quite extreme, obviously, this whole COVID-19, but it's not a bad thing to come about, I think, to make us look at what we need to produce. By one backpack that is designed to last. And we can all, as designers, look at really adopting that mantra more closely. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess to follow up on that, right, I think, you know, Tamsin, you mentioned a bit about suppliers that are struggling in this period of time, and a lot of them are focused on surviving through these times. Do you think that with the impact of COVID-19, what does it actually mean for sustainability, right? Would it actually set the sustainability agenda back, or is this actually a good opportunity to take that forward?
We're seeing a real opportunity for sustainability to become even more important and higher up on the agenda. And there was a recent report published which just represented that. I can put a link in the chat, which looked at a major survey across sourcing professionals across the industry, which demonstrated that there is the 60-70% see sustainability becoming more important post-COVID, and several reasons for that. I think one is that the link between sustainability and the origins of this crisis is becoming clear. The roots of coronavirus are in unsustainable business practices and exploitation of the environment and the planet we depend upon. And the other one is that it has changed the way we experience consumerism. It has, in two ways. One, it's made it clear, it's with millions of people in forced lockdown, it has made the values that really matter in life become higher up the agenda. And I think a lot of people are recognizing that perhaps having lots of cheap clothing is not essential to life. Perhaps there are more important things to life. And we're also seeing the result of a step back in air travel, in road travel, and we're seeing how much that can change the environment within which we live, and how in a matter of weeks we've been able to change things that we thought were impossible to change. So all of that is in the consciousness of those who operate within the industry, and that and other reasons. From the supplier side, we're seeing suppliers who have lost orders, who are looking to rebuild their customer base, and who are looking for ways to stand out. And sustainability is one of those. So we've had a growth in a spike in the number of suppliers joining Co, looking for ways that they can get certification, ways that they can represent what they're doing around sustainability so that they stand out. And finally, I think it's brought social issues to the fore. So over the last 5 years, increasingly, we've seen the environmental agenda around sustainability in the fashion industry taking more precedence, with plastic microfibers in oceans, with climate change, with water use and chemicals. Those are the issues that have hit the headlines, and the response to that it has been buy less. However, this crisis has represented what it means for suppliers and the thousands and millions of people in supply chains who are supported by the industry, what it means when we stop. And it means destitution, for millions of people behind who depend upon factories in Bangladesh, India, Asia, all over the world. Pausing production, even reducing production has been devastating. So I think it's become more clear that it's not as simple as there needs to be a more sophisticated solution to the way that we transform our industry.
Yes, and I think the final point resonates a lot, especially in recent times. I think past few weeks we've seen a lot of questions about social justice. When you think about items like not just the environment, but also about communities, about things like race, gender, discrimination. So, maybe a question for Geraldine, right? How do you think fashion can be, as an industry, can be a force for good? And how can fashion as an industry actually help address some of the social issues that Tamsin mentioned, and also ones that we're seeing in recent weeks?
Well, I think maybe we need to go back to the culture of fashion and falling in love again with the culture of fashion and reclaiming the amazing creativity of fashion as probably the most universal art form along with music. And that's different from the fashion industry as it is today. And so I was reading a great article by the founder of Futera. Her name is Solitaire Tamsin. It's an article on Forbes. And so she was saying, what do you imagine the future of fashion to look like? And to quote her, only because what she says really echoes what I think as not just a futurist, but also an activist. I'm a member of Fashion Action, XR. She talks about, climate justice, because essentially, as the second biggest polluting industry in the world now, we need to reckon with the fact that everything we do is intricately linked with justice. So that's climate justice, social justice, and we need to address the elephant in the room in order to tackle this, which is that we have to stop producing as much. There are some figures floating around saying that we have enough clothing for 6 more generations. So, and that's really, really tough because we have a whole industry that needs people who need to feed themselves. And so I think a just future of fashion starts with maybe having those tough conversations and see how we can reskill, how we can regreen the industry, how we can shift things. Even when we look at the workload, if we, sorry, I'm diverging. I'll go to my second point, which is that obviously looking at racial and gender justice, that's a huge sustainable development goal. As part of fashion sustainability, economic justice and inclusivity, and so that means people paying their suppliers, paying their full taxes, banning tax havens for these big fast fashion companies, recognizing our role in poverty, and also honesty and transparency. So we need to really lobby and start getting very active in terms of legislation. Even even one of the biggest activists in history, in current history for racial justice. I'm looking for her name right now. She is saying that the biggest emergency right now is not actually racial justice; it's climate. It's the climate. So I think right now we just have to kind of really, really educate ourselves. And so I'm really hoping that as we unlock down, that everyone, even the assistant, even the person who recently graduated, comes back to their team and initiates these conversations in order to get equipped for this new future, so that they can look up common objective, look up different resources, start retraining themselves, because potentially in the future, if we're producing less, there's still just as much opportunity to have a thriving industry around repair, around care, around transparency. Just implementing transparency it takes a huge amount of work. As a designer, maybe I'm designing less collections, but spending more of my time on implementing transparency and developing really wonderful relationships with my suppliers. I'm really hoping that this is like an exciting future, but it's an urgent future. And in that sense, I really echo what Clara Farrell was saying prior to this panel.
Excellent. I think, again, it brings home the point of the importance of climate justice, and also a lot of the importance of advocacy needed in the industry. So over to you, Sophia. We'd love to, again, hear your views a bit more about role of fashion for social justice.
Yeah, I think it's so great to take the opportunity to actually share stories. And I think if you want to look more closely at how you can prove that something is possible, doing it ethically correct. At Ground Truth, we care about the planet. Obviously, we're cleaning up plastic, but we also care about people. And I think it's really important to tell inspiring stories and to show sustainable solutions, and to prove that actually with a little bit more work, a little bit more money, actually, because at the moment, unfortunately, it's still more expensive to use recycled materials than it is virgin materials, which is crazy. But I think if everybody starts adopting it and making it kind of a definite, and it shouldn't even be a discussion. It should just be the way that we run our companies. So obviously we only just launched in last year, but I hope that in the next 5 years we can really prove that you can run a CO2 negative company, cleaning up waste, but still work in the fashion industry. Still producing beautiful garments or products, but that just have a less of a environmental footprint. And encouraging that conscious customer to be more conscious and delve deeper into the stories behind all of the products that we either make or buy.
Excellent. So we're almost out of time. So I guess final question for all four of you. What are sort of practical next steps or best practices you would like to tell the audience here today? So it can be to consumers, to brands or manufacturers. What is the most practical next step that any of them can actually take? So maybe we can begin with Tamsin.
Sure thing. Yeah. Well, I'd very much encourage you to join Common Objective if you're not already. You can join in a couple of minutes as an individual for free, and you can also set up a profile for your business. So it's so important now for businesses to have a really positive online presence, both suppliers and brands. And we're a community. I've been so inspired by some of the speakers. Sophia, and your business is inspirational. What you're doing through your products and the commitment and dedication, and that's what Common Objective is. It's really all about bringing together a community around a common objective. So 30,000 individuals, entrepreneurs, suppliers who believe that things can be done differently and who are collaborating to achieve that. I believe that we can do things differently through joining forces, and now is an exciting time to achieve that.
So you mentioned a bit about Sophia. So Sophia, again, for you, what are practical next steps for the audience?
Yeah, and Tamsin, I totally agree with you. I think we need to unite, and I think we need to share much more. And I think in the past, in industries, whether it's the film industry that I'm from or the fashion industry that I'm now kind of joining, I think there's been a lot of secrecy and a lot of like need to like self-protect and promote your own brand. And I don't think that's the future of fashion and the future for life at all. I think we have to unite, we have to share, but at the same time recognizing that, you know, you have to run a business. I mean, we have to sell bags to survive, but I definitely don't only want to sell bags. We want to, you know, people to buy into stories, to share supply chains, to share information. You know, I mean, it's not easy starting a business, but it's that thing of if you don't try, you won't know. And if you have a dream, like go for it, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. I mean, and you know, I can talk a lot on a whole panel about mistakes, but as long as we learn from that, then the world can be better. You know, so. Yeah,
there are so many examples of entrepreneurs who have done it, and you hear the negative stories, but there are hundreds of businesses that are forging forward. So I imagine we've got quite a few people in the audience who are setting up businesses or considering doing so. Now is an exciting time to do that.
Yeah, and all eyes are on the environment as well, but like with the environment interacting with people, and it's that harmonious unity that we really need to kind of foster. Moving forward.
Great. So I think we have a final minute. So I'll quickly let Geraldine and Christine, 30 seconds answer the Geraldine.
I would say when you are back at the office, have a board for your long-term future, almost like a vision board, as a life coach would tell you. Have this, your dream world in 10, 15 years. What do you want the world to look like for you, your kids, or whatever? Maybe get inspired by a documentary like 2040 or Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez's video of what the future may look like. And then have another board about your immediate solutions, maybe the 1 to 3 year solutions that you need to put in place. And find someone on your team to dedicate that time for the research for the immediate solutions, and then how they can hopefully start meeting the long-term and the short-term solutions. And don't be afraid to confront the really tough questions about how we need to kind of produce less, because if you don't address it now, it's going to be addressed for you at a later date anyways. So I think it's an exciting time. It's a tough time because it's like when you clean up your house or you're moving, you're unpacking, it's messy, but afterwards you have a beautiful new home to go back to. So
Christine, over to you. Final word of advice.
Yes. There are a lot of resources available. Common Objective is amazing. Kering and Common Objective just partnered and launched a biodiversity hub. So if you want to learn more about the link between fashion and biodiversity, we say go check it out. So look at the resources, stay informed. Collaboration is obviously key. We've talked about that. The Fashion Pact is another example of powerful collaboration that will hopefully lead to very positive change in the fashion industry. And also we talked about storytelling and what is your story? And I would really recommend also catering your story to your audience. We have a lot of facts now that show, if the Financial Times just published an article about how ESG investments outperform regular non-ESG investments. So who are you talking to? And depending on who it is within your company, your business, whatever your audience is, make sure your story is going to resonate with them, and try to use that evidence that's growing by the day that demonstrates that being more sustainable can also be better for your business when you're trying to incorporate and push that change forward.
And I think researching the future as part of that is really key. If I just might chime in, one of my goals as a futurist is really to teach people, anyone should be a futurist. I really believe in the future. My job will be gone, and everyone will be in tune with where the future is going. So I also share a lot of resources and have a course at the moment on this. So thanks for having us, Alex.
Yeah, so excellent. I think we're out of time, but again, thank you very much to the four of you for sharing, and to everyone else, remember to take action. So I'll hand time back over to your hosts at the festival. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex.